Thank you everyone for coming today. This is our first webinar in a series, first in a while, I should say. We did some of these several years ago, pretty successful, took a little bit of a break, but we're bringing them back. We're really excited for that. Today's topic is standing out from the crowd, optimizing your online presence as a recruiter. I've got some great panelists here I'm going to introduce, and then we're going to pop into some things. But like I mentioned before, if you have any questions at any point in time, feel free to use that Q&A button at the bottom. So from a panelist perspective, I'm going to go kind of how my screen's laid out. So up on the top corner for me anyway, we've got Jen Storl. Jen is the Vice President of Talent over at Smartsheet. Smartsheet is a modern project and work management platform in the flawless hometown of Seattle. Jen is a champion for personal and professional development to optimize organizational goals and initiatives, understanding that background, motivations, and work styles are unique. So thank you so much for being here, Jen.
Thank you.
And you're one of our original panelists from that previous back in the day.
This is my third.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So thank you for coming back again.
You bet. You bet.
Wonderful. We also have Cassie Bradley. Cassie is the VP of People at Ladder in Palo Alto. Ladder is on a mission to redeem life insurance for the digital consumer. Using an all-digital architecture and real-time underwriting, Ladder is making life insurance as accessible, affordable, and beloved as it should be. Ladder was recently named one of the top 20 best workplaces in the Bay Area in 2022. So congratulations on that, Cassie, and thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here today.
Wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
And in that fourth corner, we have Megan Conlin. Megan is the manager of US sales and customer success recruiting at Miro, based in Austin, Texas. Miro is a whiteboard, but better, with more than 35 million users, 99% of Fortune 100 companies. Miro is the online collaborative whiteboard platform that enables distributed teams to work effectively together. We are also users and big fans of Miro. We recently were doing some strategic planning sessions, and it was such a great just brainstorming platform for us to get our ideas out, pull them together, and really kind of come up with a final product. So welcome, Megan. Thank you so much for being here.
Love, Nancy. So excited to be here.
Wonderful. All right. So let's start. Let's get into things. And truthfully, we're probably going to go all over the place. But to start, we'll kind of, maybe address a little bit of the elephant in the room, right? The market for recruiters, talent acquisition a year ago, 6 months ago, was very different from where we are right now. We've seen a lot of layoffs in the last couple of days, weeks, months. It seems to kind of be going around right now. And so we know there are a lot of really great talent acquisition professionals, recruiters, sourcers, folks out there that maybe were affected by some of these layoffs, or maybe are feeling a little concerned that you may be affected by them in the future. So we wanted to put this panel together and share some of the thoughts and perspectives from these folks on what you can do to be prepared for that, what you can do to proactively manage your online presence so that you stand a better shot at landing that perfect next dream job in the recruiting world. So to start, I'm actually going to start with maybe an opinion-based question, which is, when we think about all of those pieces or artifacts that we use, resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn profiles, video interviews, who knows? There's so many ways that people can get their presence out there. What's most important for you all? What are the pieces you're really looking for when you're looking for new folks on your talent team? And I'll let anyone start, but if you're a little shy, I'll call on someone too.
Go ahead, Megan.
Well, I was going to say, I think it really starts with that LinkedIn presence, which I know is the reason that we're all here. Our recruiters and sourcers, when we're doing our hiring, we're looking at LinkedIn as our first and primary source of who we're targeting. So having a fully robust LinkedIn profile and presence is going to be the best foot forward to getting in front of, especially a tech or a SaaS company.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about this a little bit earlier too, is just like, if you have a really robust LinkedIn profile, make sure your resume is aligned to that. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of click to apply kind of motions out there. And if you are uploading a resume, just make sure everything's up to date and it is aligned to your LinkedIn profile, because that's where everyone's going to be going first. Super curious on how many video call outs that y'all get with your applicants. I get a couple and I'm always very intrigued. So, and I do watch them. I like it. I'm going to look at your LinkedIn profile. I'm going to be looking at your metrics first, but the videos are just like, oh, hi there.
Yeah, it's a nice
Totally.
differentiator, right?
Yeah. Cassie, do you get them a lot? Yeah.
I do not actually.
Yeah.
Super interesting. I think for me, definitely LinkedIn is kind of, where we start. And I appreciate folks, honestly, after they do apply, they do reach out. And I think that is something that I would encourage. There's nothing lost in that, especially when there are a lot of applicants. So if you can, I think emails can only benefit you. And again, that demonstrates for me kind of how do you present yourself to candidates? What's your writing style? It kind of gives an opportunity to first, get some flavor of who you are as a recruiter.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think the traditional resume is so focused on what was the position, what was the work. There's not a lot of room for personality maybe in a resume, but when your LinkedIn profile, you have that room to have a personality, to differentiate yourself in that overview section and in those I sometimes will spend my time looking through their posts or their activity thread. What are they commenting on? What are they liking? What are they talking about? Because that says a lot about how they approach their work as well. So it's not just even filling in the blanks, that LinkedIn is going to guide you through, but looking at all those other pieces too. Are there any other of those weird little sections that people might be overlooking that you check out?
I just wanted to say really quickly to Cassie's point that the in-mail has almost replaced the cover letter. It could be that we get a stack of applicants, but that person that's in-mailed me, even if I'm not the right person for the role that they're specifically targeting, I'm going to take the extra 5 seconds to look at their LinkedIn profile and then send them to the right person. So I do not read cover letters anymore. Very rarely. I do read LinkedIn about me's. So I guess that could replace that. But to second just what Cassie mentioned, in-mails is certainly something that I would not shy away from if you're really interested in the position.
That's really great to hear. One of the things I notice on a lot of LinkedIn profiles for recruiters is that a lot of times they utilize that position description section as this is what my company does, this is what I'm hiring for, and then it just stays like that forever. So do you see that pretty regularly too? And how should people be utilizing that real estate in their profile?
I like to see metrics. I like to see what you've been working on, what roles you're filling, the time to fill them, what that looks like for your full year. Like we should all have an attainment number that you have to be successful in your role. And if you have metrics on your LinkedIn profile, I will read through them. If it's a company update, that just shows me that you don't care about it, or you don't have them, or you don't measure them, which is a story that I will tell myself if it's not there.
Yeah, that's great.
I was going to echo I really do look for impact, right? So I love to read stories around either how you've helped the team, how you've helped the company. I definitely also lean into data. So conversion rates, offer acceptance, time to hire, KPIs that I care about, but it also signals to kind of justice what you care about. So those are definitely things that stick out for me. On the other side, flip side, I'm also looking at if there are typos or formatting that's funky, that's also a signal that I'm probably not going to engage. So that kind of holds equal weighting.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And I think goes back to what Jen was saying earlier, which is your resume, if you're going to send one, if that's part of the application process, really needs to match your LinkedIn profile. I've had some where they haven't matched, and that has just created a whole other host of questions in my head about who is this person? What did they do? How did they do it? How will they present themselves at work? So you really do want to make sure that there's consistency, not just in the cleanliness of your format, but across all of these platforms as well. So yeah.
One of the things too that I've seen be very successful is asking for recommendations from the hiring managers that you have worked with. If you see the impact from someone else's voice, it goes a long way on our side. And then I also like to see what you do outside of work. What else do you care about? What does that full picture look like for you?
Yeah. Amazing.
What groups are you a part of? I do look at posts as well. So make sure you're remaining, professional. Just as Facebook is for personal networking, LinkedIn should also be for professional networking. So make sure that you're keeping all of your correspondence professional in nature on LinkedIn, because it is very easy to see from your activity what you've posted on, what you've reacted to, what comments you've made.
Yeah. We're starting to call out some of those, yellow, orange, red flags maybe that we also are looking at. So some of the spelling and formatting, maybe how you're commenting or what you're commenting on. Are there any other little flags that maybe make you go, wait a minute, what does this mean?
I think the only one that comes to mind is connections. It's not very often, but like very little connections also gives me pause. I don't see it very often, but definitely is a flag.
How often do you all reach out to connections from folks that you've seen on LinkedIn? So like they're connected with someone that or they're connected with someone. I think in the recruiter space, to Cassie's point, we have a lot of connections. Yeah. And so it is because we've reached out, it is because we've done a search and what that looks like. But I'm just curious from Megan and Cassie, your perspective, how often do you see, they're connected with, and then you reach out?
All the time.
Yeah,
I would say all the time.
Yeah, more often than not, especially if it's someone I, work directly with. I think that's, definitely helpful.
Yeah. And sometimes even reaching out, if it's someone that I'm actually connected to that I know well firsthand, then I may even ask, how do you know this person, before I reach out? So, but yes, I think it's advantageous to have connections, lots of connections on LinkedIn for sure.
Yeah, this is a funny, I'm actually glad you brought this up because it reminds me of something else that I've often thought was kind of funny. I'm often one of the later interviewers in a process. And if you have already talked to 2 or 3 members of my team and I see that you're not connected to them yet, that to me always feels a little bit funny. I'm like, I know you sat down and talked with them and we're all recruiters here. So you'd think the first thing you would have done was maybe hit that connect button or something like that. So yeah, I think connections matter. They're important. And it's good to know that those are things you're keeping an eye on and that there might be some conversations happening. So yeah, cool. All right. So, I think we previously talked about something that, the video pieces, Jen, if somebody's got that, you're going to watch it. It makes them kind of stand out a little bit. Is there anything else that makes someone stand out maybe from the rest of the pile or the stack or the pool or the applicants or however you're kind of running through folks? Sounds like maybe in-mails following up from applications was one.
I'm in a space now too, to where if I'm looking for a recruiter specifically for engineering and a leader in engineering, I want you to specialize. I don't want that you're just a recruiter. I want SaaS sales. I'm a marketing G&A recruiter specializing in, and I really want to be able to see that. And if I see that, that's going to be a part of my search criteria anyway. And so you're going to pop up, you're going to be a part of it. And it's okay to specialize. The space of being a generalist, and I've done it all, isn't attractive anymore. In the SaaS market and the tech market, we want people who know our space and have done it before and have been successful doing it. So just call it out.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, plus one to that, Jen, because we're recruiters, we have a unique lens of what hiring managers are likely going to be looking for. So make sure that your LinkedIn profile is actually searchable. To Jen's point, sales and customer success, I also want folks that have specialized. So I am searching for a sales recruiter specifically. So if that's in your title and I can pull that in a Boolean search string, awesome. Another note would be looking at what job descriptions are posted on LinkedIn. What are some of the qualification terms, and making sure that those are also searchable in your LinkedIn profile. Think of yourself as a candidate and flip the table as if you were actually sourcing yourself. How would you show up in a search string?
That is such great advice, and I think is something that I try to apply across the world and in my life, right? When you're so close to something, you can sometimes be blind to the obvious stuff. As recruiters, we coach candidates all day long, but sometimes it's really hard to sit back and go, oh wait, now I'm the candidate. How would I coach myself through this? How would I, if I'm dealing with any other candidate in the world, what am I telling them to prepare them for interviews and to prepare their profiles? Take that, apply it to yourself, and 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to be able to find some stuff that could use some work. So amazing. Wonderful. Any other thoughts on that?
I think it just depends on the size of the team and the stage of the company. So Ladder's a smaller company, we're 150. And so for us, like I definitely appreciate a generalist that can demonstrate, the skills to grow and adapt. That's what I'm looking for, is adaptability and flexibility. Of course, if I have a technical recruiter, I'm going to look for that technical recruiter, but our business can ebb and flow. And so those are also things I'm looking for.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of something we previously talked about before this session about, there have been a lot of layoffs. There have been a lot of companies who have been, contracting the size of their talent teams and other teams at the company. But there are still a lot of recruiter jobs out there. There's still a lot of work out there for us. And so, how can people be prepared for that? How can they maybe expand their mind, right? If the startups are not hiring as much and they are looking for generalists, but the larger companies are hiring more and they're looking for specialists, how can you maybe reflect that in your profile and kind of target your search and your profile together?
I think it's really important to be very intentional with the role that you are applying for. To Cassie's point, she is going to be looking for a generalist because the team might be a different size. And we need you to be able to bob and weave through anything that we throw your way and make your outreach to the hiring team, the hiring manager, and your first touch tailored to the impact that you're going to make in that space. With an aggressive growing company that they're looking for SaaS sales recruiters, make it intentional on how you've been successful in that space. Yeah. And just like Cassie said, one size doesn't fit all here. And when you make it personal and you make it purposeful with your outreach, that will come through.
Yeah, amazing.
And to Jen's point as well, as you're in the interview process, hopefully with multiple companies, you are interviewing us just as we're interviewing you. So I wouldn't apply to a company or start the interview process with a company where you don't maybe ultimately end up seeing yourself there long term. I'm glad Nancy mentioned this, but there are like 16,000 live recruiter jobs on LinkedIn right now. So although it feels like there's layoffs happening, and they are happening every day, but there are still lots of companies that are still hiring. So I don't want to paint this really grim picture that we're all vying for just a couple of spots that are left. It's just simply not the case. So you can still be intentional, to Jen's point. What I'm looking for as a hiring manager in a recruiter is going to be different than what Cassie's looking for. A more modern looking resume with maybe your bucket list on the left-hand side might work for Miro, but may not work for a healthcare recruiter. I'm just throwing a name out there. So just something to keep in mind as well, to do your research on the industry as well that you are applying for.
Yeah. It's really important too, when you're going through this process and we're in this space, which feels like, again, is to understand your why. And while it can be very scary with the limbo and the gray, take the time to be able to, like, this is what I want to do and this is why I want to do it. This is the type of leader, as Megan was saying, you're interviewing the company and the hiring team as much as they're interviewing you. This is what I want from a leader. This is what I want to be a part of as far as a product or a platform that you're going to be a part of. So really be able to understand your why and articulate that. And that intention is going to go super far, and take the time to do it.
Yeah, I just echo exactly that. Anyone I talk to outside of recruiting, anyone that comes to me like I'm looking for a new job, I always encourage them to really write out, literally take a piece of paper and write it out what you're looking for. There may be trade-offs in some of the searches you have, but at least you have an understanding. And you can easily kind of think about like, does this next company align with what I really, really want out of my next role? It's super important. There's nothing worse than joining a company and being unhappy. And so, yes, please take the time to take care of you.
Do you ever ask candidates at that interview stage about their why and their purpose? Does that ever become part of the interview process?
Always. Always. Every
so it's
interview
not just a futile exercise to write it down. It's actually interview prep. Yep.
And when you're talking about your why, it will also go to your motivations. And what are your motivators for this next? And so be able to have that dialogue, but that it might be my first or second question. How are you doing? How did we get here? Kind of thing. Yeah.
Great. We kind of glanced through it quickly, but I want to go back to this idea of data and metrics and KPIs, because I'm sure we've all been frustrated by a resume or a LinkedIn or something that just has your standard, I run intake meetings with hiring managers, I close candidates. It's like, okay, yes, you do. We all do. But tell me what, tell me how often or frequently. What are some of those metrics that you're looking for? And then I'll also recognize that there are some companies that's not a priority for them. So what advice do you have for people who maybe haven't traditionally tracked their own metrics, maybe don't know that off of the top of their head? What can they do? How can they provide you with that context if they're working in an organization that maybe hasn't highlighted that historically? Let's maybe start with that first part. I know it was a two-part question. So let's start with the first part of the metrics. What are the pieces you're looking for? What's important to you?
So for me, I'm looking at number of requisitions on average that you're holding, either a month or a quarter. And if requisitions means total headcount, or if that means I have 5 requisitions, but I actually have 12 openings, like I need to know the difference between those two. I know that both Jen and Cassie mentioned, total hires, offer acceptance rate, time to hire, time to fill. So how quickly you're able to close a requisition. I think those are all really important metrics that most recruiting leaders are going to be looking for. I have worked in companies before where those things weren't tracked for us, or I wasn't being held to those in a really stringent way. But those are typically very easy things with a little bit of math. If you're at least tracking the candidates that you've hired, you would be able to do some retroactive work and figure out, well, how many of those maybe didn't accept the offer, and I can calculate what my offer acceptance rate is. So that would be my suggestion. If it's not something that's actively being tracked at your company, just do a little bit of math. Google how to maybe figure out what a time to hire calculation might be, and figure it out.
Yeah, great. Cassie, is there anything specific
Yeah,
you're looking for?
I was gonna say the thing I think that's for me like a great recruiter, some other data points that I would just totally zoom in on is conversion rate, and just so here as an example, at Ladder, at one point we had a 4-to-1 offer ratio for our engineers from on-site to offer. That is now 2-to-1. So really, those are expensive interviews. So anyway, you convert it also to dollars or manager's time, depending on it. I think it's super powerful. So those are some of the other data points. I think also candidate experience, if your team is measuring that, would be, I would be so excited to see that. And it's okay. Like, I actually love to see the story of like, it started here, we did X, Y, and Z, now it's here. So as much storytelling also would be something I'm looking for.
I actually like to Cassie's point, that conversion ratio, but look at the conversion ratio for the entire funnel. and where are the gaps? And if there are gaps, like why are folks dropping out post hiring manager screen before the loop? Or why are folks dropping out after the loop? And then really understanding the source of the top of funnel and how many folks are coming in and where they're coming in from. You know, we're in a space now where we should all be very intentional about the where we're getting our talent and the look and feel and background and the diversity of our talent. So you track it. You're going to need to be able to track what that top of funnel looks like, and then track them through the funnel and find out, like, what do we have to do on our end to be able to make that more appealing? You know, 6 months ago, we were in a space to where like candidates have their choice. They can go anywhere they want. So really refining what that looks like internally in your processes is really important.
Yeah. So far, we've been talking a lot about that resume, that LinkedIn, the stuff that kind of gets you in the door. But if we start talking about the interview process, we've started to touch on it here, where we want to see your metrics on that piece of paper, on that profile. But we want to know you can talk about it, right? What does that conversion metric mean? And what did you do with that conversion metric? So do you have any advice for folks on how to tell those stories in a way that is compelling, but also realistic, because it's not always sunshine and roses. So yeah, any advice for the storytelling aspects of thing in the interview?
I always revert back to using the STAR method when answering questions, which is a pretty standard recruiter interview tactic. So your situation, your task, your action, your result. And you can use that even when sharing about your data. Here's a situation I had with a very difficult rec. Here is what the initial pipeline looked like. My in-mail response rate was X, and I was able to impact it by doing X, Y, Z. By the end of filling this really difficult rec, my conversion rate looked like this, and here's how I impacted that. So that would be one way I would think of, is using the STAR method when answering questions in an interview.
Wonderful. Great. Sort of related to this question, we just had a question come through Q&A, and it relates to one of the other questions we had come through Q&A. So we'll address both. But this first one is, we have someone transitioning into recruiting from another industry. So in this instance, Sarah writes, I'm a transitioning teacher looking to get into the recruiting world. Would it be helpful to include data from the classroom since I do not have typical recruiting metrics?
I see that as intention and how you measure your output and how important that is for you. So in whatever you're doing, if you're in some sort of sport and you understand the metrics around that sport, it is important for you to measure what you're doing and to move forward and get better. So I think that any type of measurement of what you've done as an example would be super beneficial. Also, as a teacher, and the relationship skills that you have as a teacher, I think that's a really easy transition to be able to get into recruiting. So good luck to you.
Yes, I think we all have maybe favorite industries to pull from outside of recruiting when building teams. Teachers are pretty high on my list. Lawyers are pretty high on my list. Any others? Anyone else you all try to recruit from?
You know, it's interesting. We've had a couple folks from our sales team convert to our recruiting team. Okay. You know, recruiting is sales. It is it is, and we do end to end. We do a full cycle. Each recruiter does. And so you know how to prospect, you know how to build your business case, you know how to be able to close out. So sales is also a really big industry for us.
I would say any customer facing, relationship building industry or role that you have come into is very applicable to starting a recruiting career. It's all about networking. It's all about being curious, asking the right questions, understanding how to qualify we're talking about the why, we're talking about their motivators, and then are they qualified for the role that we have open. So if you are curious and if you are interested in learning more about people and building a rapport those are definitely foundational competencies of being a recruiter.
That's great. Yeah. And any metrics related to those competencies, regardless of industry or profession, is going to be relevant. The other question that came up was more general and is, what advice do you have for people looking to break into recruiting from other fields? Is there anything that they can highlight on their LinkedIn profiles or resumes, or anything that they can highlight in the interviews that would make them maybe stand out?
I think if they're not in the field, kind of Megan's point, I definitely am looking for team players. People are passionate about people, data driven. So I think some of those definitely translate to a lot of different roles that could, benefit from when you join a recruiting team or a role. So those are some of the first things that come to mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think to Cassie's point earlier, depending on the size of the recruiting team or the company that you're joining, for Miro, for example, if you're brand new to recruiting, you may start out as a coordinator on my team. So understanding that you may not be a coordinator for more than a year, but you may have to start with really learning the foundation of what the beginnings of a recruiting process looks like. So that would, and for that, your organizational skills or project management, things that you have owned with different teams, and showcasing your time management and being able to handle deadlines and things of that nature, also very applicable to the recruiting function at large.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of this is even if you're not in recruiting, try to understand a little bit of the requirements of the job, right? Understanding what that recruiting process is. There are so many parallels. It's funny you mentioned project management, because we've been really hammering in project management fundamentals internally at Flawless of what does it mean to be a project manager? How do you apply some of the things that they're doing when they're building software to when we're delivering a service to a customer or a client? So that is a huge part of the job, a huge part of the role.
Totally. And if you have a robust recruiting function at your company, even if you don't, quite frankly, there are going to be projects that you're part of, cross-functional things that you're working on. Whether that's your people team or perhaps building out with your recruiting operations team, there are lots of things that you would be able to do process improvement on or build a project end to end as a recruiter, which is kind of unique about our role, I think. So I think highlighting those strengths are very important too.
How important is some of that cross-functional work to you all when you're hiring recruiters? Are you looking for somebody who can really, I mean, it probably depends, on where you're at as a company, but how important is it to you that somebody really is a good, strong, fundamental recruiter, but also has some of these cross-functional skills and abilities?
Very. I think that we come from a space to where we are the experts in talent acquisition, and our leaders are looking for recommendations and advisory from us. They don't want to do the lifting of where do I get the talent? What does that look like? You want to be able to dig in with them, like, tell me what the gaps are on your team. This is how I understand what this role actually means. And this is how it's connected to the rest of the team. So we've had folks at pandemic, we had a shifting work streams program at Smartsheet, to where we took our recruiters, because there was a halt on adding net new heads, and we took our recruiters and they worked on projects within the business. And the most successful projects that they worked on were within the businesses that they recruited for. So if you're recruiting for the sales org or the CX org, being able to lean in there and really understanding even more about those roles is huge. So have that curiosity, and not just like you're placing the candidate in front of the folks, but like, why does it matter to have this role?
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to be able to have that cross-functional curiosity and acumen.
Yeah, that's amazing.
At Miro, we have OKRs, so key result projects that we work on a quarterly basis. So there are lots of opportunities for recruiters, sourcers, recruiting coordinators to be doing stretch projects, getting acclimated or exposure to different parts of the recruiting function, how to optimize, do process improvement. And we too actually are about to embark upon an exercise of taking on longer term projects that are cross-functional, as we are doing some conservative headcount alignment. So very, very important to be able to do project work as well.
Wonderful. Cassie, in that smaller, maybe startup world, is that also consistent there? Probably even more so, maybe.
More so, yes.
Yeah.
So yes, definitely. We are a small team. I think balancing a little bit what Jen spoke to, I every week try to arm my team with what's happening in the business. How do we play a role? I think that's really important. And if you are currently employed and you don't have a sense of that, I definitely encourage you to ask those questions. But yeah, as you know, for us, we did do some reforecasting. I think every business is going through that. And it definitely allowed our team to identify what's most important to the broader people strategy and what are the different things that we need to work on. So for instance, we just opened our office. We just returned to our office. So our recruiting coordinator, is very exciting. But yeah, our coordinator had the chance to step in and help with office management and different, workflows there. We also had a meetup, so all of us pitched in. So I definitely think there's benefit to understanding not only how talent acquisition plays a key part of the employee experience, but the broader employee experience. And so there's nothing that you lose by pitching in and helping the broader team.
Yeah, amazing. I can't remember now which one of you mentioned this, but we talked about it a little bit this morning too, which is, there might be people on the call who are still currently employed, who have not been impacted by these layoffs. Maybe they are feeling totally fine and comfortable, but maybe they're starting to feel a little concerned about their business. So what might those folks do proactively to make themselves valuable, maybe avoid that layoff, or if they are, unfortunately impacted by it, kind of be ready for what comes after that?
Yeah. Lean in with your hiring managers, lean in with your leaders. We had talked about there are so many opportunities as a business right now to do more with less. And so what are those efficiencies? So your hiring manager is not going to get that extra headcount. How can you lean in that space to be able to make yourself valuable in what their gap is? I think that there are also a lot of efficiencies and asks of recruiting. Like, it's always recruiting's fault if you don't have the headcount to do what they need to do, or we don't have enough money, kind of thing. So this is what I'm actually doing at the top of the funnel to be able to get us a more diverse workforce. This is what I'm doing. There's so many areas of opportunity. Do you have training for your entire org? Do you need to look at it again with where we're at? So the efficiencies with what you're doing, track them, document them, and evangelize them. You have to tell people what you're doing. You have to tell the impact it's going to make, and you have to stay in front of them. Do not shy away from the hard work that you're doing.
That is a lesson it took me too many years to learn. The work does not speak for itself, unfortunately. Right. You have to speak for the work and really, like you said, evangelize it. Megan, I saw you nodding along pretty heavily with me too.
Oh yes, yes. I have recruiters on my team, quite frankly, that it's sometimes pulling teeth to get them to quote unquote brag about what the work that they're doing. But if I don't see it, especially in a remote environment, I need you to tell me sometimes the extra things that you're doing. But you mentioned, diversity and inclusion, Tiger teams. Is there enablement that could be spruced up, or onboarding? Is your people team running leaner? So could your HR function use you to shadow and do some extra coordination? Shadow your sales team or your marketing team and do some knowledge sharing. There are lots of things to do in a company that's slowing down. Hiring, maybe doing a little bit of a pause where you can still raise your hand. I would say raise your hand, and then ask the questions. Be transparent with your leaders. How are things really going in the company? Because I'm concerned, and would you be forthcoming with me if I should start looking? I would just suggest being as transparent and vulnerable with your hiring team and with your leader as possible.
So great. Cassie, would you
Yeah,
add
I
anything?
think just to echo, I mean, I think totally well, but like I cannot think of a moment in my career where there wasn't my wish list of things to do as a people team. And I think it's, you know, when things ebb and flow, it's a great opportunity to fix all the things that you have had on that wish list. Like, so for us, we're working on our recruiting operations manual. We have never documented how to open a rec, process a rec, hire a rec, close a rec. We're doing a lot of those just fundamental things that are going to very much set the foundation and prepare us for the next wave of next roles. So yeah, think about that wish list and contribute if you can.
That is so good. And was what, that's what I was going to add to, which is recruiting is so often that go team. Like when you have hiring targets, they need to be filled now, not, you know, at a leisurely pace. And so when we have some of this quiet time, make as much use of it as possible. And sometimes that just means turn your computer off, take 30 minutes with your pen and paper and write down, what have I been annoyed about in the last month? How can I fix that right now? You know, how can I make sure that the next hiring manager I work with is ready and prepared to work with me in the best way possible? Because many hiring managers are new at this, right? Or they aren't great at it. And so what can you do now that's a resource for them? So when you do open roles back up again, you're hitting the ground running and you're that much faster. So yeah, there's a lot that folks can do to prepare for when things get wild again, because they will get wild again.
Yeah, hiring manager or interviewer training in general, this is a great time. If there is time, this is a great time to be training your teams how to actually effectively interview.
Yeah. It's so hard to do that when they're actually interviewing candidates because we have them for such a limited amount of time, right? If you can only take 2-3 hours a week from, you know, the interviewer's day job, their regular job, when you're busy, it's all put towards interviewing. It's not towards kind of the feedback or the training or the development of them in those roles. So yeah. You know, one thing I skipped over earlier, but is something we talked about previously. So I want to make sure we bring it up. And also because I'm seeing some comments and questions about diversity and inclusion. And so the question that came up this morning was, you know, how do y'all feel about profile photos on LinkedIn? Resumes don't traditionally have photos, at least not in the US. And so LinkedIn does. How do y'all feel about that?
I'm okay with no photo.
Okay.
Support the no photo. Yeah.
I think traditionally we hear like photo is really important and you got to have it and it's got to be professional and, you know, it's got to fit in the box the right way. But Megan, Jen, yes or no?
Yeah, I'll answer it this way. I am definitely okay with no photo. That is totally cool with me. I love to see your personality in your photo. It does not need to be a quintessential professional headshot. Mine isn't. So I love to see a little bit of personality, talking about, you know, standing out. I also love to see your headline, maybe not just being your title, that your LinkedIn headline is a little bit about you. I have my Myers-Briggs results in my LinkedIn headline. So just something also that helps you stand out. But again, I want to echo that it is okay. And I have interviewed plenty of folks that did not have a LinkedIn profile picture.
Yeah, I'm 100% okay with it. In fact, our recruiter screens are done via phone, not Zoom.
Same.
And so it's not, I prefer it. I want to hear from you. I want to hear about your background. And so I'm 100% okay. I also do want to hear about what's important to you though. So if there are affiliations and organizations that are important to you, I want to hear about that. Let's talk about it.
Amazing. Okay, let me double check some of the questions that have come in. It looks like, Yeah, let's actually back up to one of these topics from the beginning, which was about posting or liking on LinkedIn about social issues or generally that kind of activity thread. So the question here is, what are your thoughts on people posting or liking posts on LinkedIn about social issues? If it's something I stand for, I post or reblog about it, but I know not everyone who would be looking at my profile would agree with the stance. Would that be a negative for you if you disagreed with the beliefs?
No.
How are you disagreeing with them? How are you disagreeing with them?
Exactly.
It's how you do it. Yeah.
Yep. We are looking for diversity of thought and opinion. And I am certainly not looking for someone who is like me in every single way. But I do care how you treat and speak to other human beings. So that's what I meant by keeping it professional on LinkedIn, because you can see how you comment or how you react or how you post the things on LinkedIn that you do.
Well, and you think about the company that you're going into and the employee base and the diversity of that employee base, and how will you then react to someone who has a different opinion of yours, and the respect that needs to be across the board for both of you. Like that needs to show up on your LinkedIn profile, and just the respect of opinion. Have your own, but respect others as well.
That's great advice. Okay, let's do one final question from the Q&A box here before we maybe move to final thoughts. But this last question is from Samantha, and she says, do you have any advice for someone who wants to transition from high volume recruiting to more talent acquisition or other non-high volume recruiting?
I laugh because there's been such high volume recruiting happening, and especially in sales and in the SaaS space, that I can see people wanting to pivot out of that. I think for us, the difference between really high volume recruiting and more one-to-one type of openings and fill is just the specialty and the refinement of the process and the courtship of those candidates and what that looks like. The courtship of an engineer is going to be different than the courtship of a quota carrying rep. So how have you pivoted, and what does that look like for you, and why is that meaningful for you? And be able to dig deep in what that looks like, not just say I'm tired.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah, those recruiters tend to, talking about data, they really know their data. They've really been able to impact their conversion rates. They have strong candidate experience or candidate NPS scores. They really understand how to sell the value proposition of their company, and they start asking for more. So the recruiters on my team that are now working on more of those niche leadership recs that, they don't have 12 headcount a quarter, they have maybe 4, because it's all longer term, niche leadership roles. They got there by asking for more and proving that they can have the more strategic conversations, both with the hiring managers, who tend to be more elevated if the rec is more niche, but also in the candidate value proposition, in the way that they close. It's not so much quick churn.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right, we've got just under 10 minutes left here. So I'm going to ask each of you if you have any final closing thoughts or advice that you think the audience could benefit from that maybe we haven't had a chance to touch on quite yet. Nailed it all already?
Got something. I say this often, and I say it especially with the internal team, is that in the space that we're in right now, they will not build the thing to sell the thing without the human capital that this group provides. So know your worth here and know the impact that you're making. And we're going to get through this next.
Amazing. Thank you. Cassie, how about you?
Yeah, I think the first thing comes to mind is just hopefully you take away, you can still be your authentic self. And we really want to see that and appreciate your uniqueness. So all those little moments on your LinkedIn, or if you have an in-mail or your resume, there's no right template. You still want to see you. And so hopefully you take that away from this conversation today.
I love that. Thank you. And Megan, how about you?
We say this internally on our Mirror recruiting team a lot, humans first. And I think in talent acquisition, also very unique that people are our product. So if you're interviewing for a recruiting team, hopefully they also have that at the forefront of their mind. So also to echo what Jen and Cassie have said so well is make sure that you know your why, you know your motivators, you're being intentional with who you're applying to, and you're also interviewing that company and that hiring manager too. So be true to your authentic self, and understand that we're all humans first.
I love that. Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for coming, for being here. Before we log off, I'm going to invite one of my coworkers, Amber Smith-Myers from here at Flawless, to share a little bit that we're trying to do to help and support the community here. So Amber, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nancy. And first, I'd like to extend a huge thank you to all of our panelists for taking time out of their busy schedules to host this with us today. I know us here at Flawless and each of the participants viewing this webinar are very appreciative of the understanding and insight you've been able to provide us with today. So now that we've all heard it from these hiring influencers' mouths themselves about just how important our LinkedIn profiles are and why, myself and 4 of my colleagues here on the Flawless Internal R4R team, Jesse, Allison, Vaughn, and Oge, would like to extend the offer of scheduling a one-on-one with us to get a deeper dive and personal consultation of your own LinkedIn profile. We've discussed how many of us in the talent acquisition industry are finding ourselves in the job market. So if this is a matter that is more relevant to you now more than ever before, or if you aren't looking to make a transition, but your current role, from your current role, but you simply desire to receive some assistance in ensuring your profile is checking all the necessary boxes, then either way, 2 of our core values here at Flawless are empowering others to build community and taking deliberate action. And what better way for us to walk the walk than to partner with our fellow industry professionals to improve these dynamic spaces that we operate within. I'll be sending a follow-up email to all of today's attendees with a link to each of our 5 calendars so that you may schedule a time for this one-on-one conversation accordingly. So be sure to keep an eye out for that and feel free to send each of us a LinkedIn connection request while you're at it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Amber. And I can really attest to the R4R team here. They look at recruiter resumes all day long, every day. They have seen some great ones. They have seen some less than great ones. And they have always been really great at forwarding along the folks who really, can bring value to Flawless and in turn bring that value to our clients. So I will say thank you so much again to all of you, Jen, Cassie, Megan, and Amber. This has been a lot of fun. I'm seeing the kind of chat start to roll again, and it seems like a lot of folks got a lot of value out of this. So thank you for sharing your experience, your knowledge, and everything else. And with that, I'll say have a wonderful Thursday, or as we sometimes refer to it at Flawless, Friday Junior or pre-Friday. We're almost there. It's another summer weekend coming up. So we will get there. Happy Friday Junior, everyone. Thank you to our panelists. We'll see you again in about a month.